Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a chilly night. I'm Peter Carter, the Chief Executive Officer of the International Society for Quality in Healthcare, and I welcome you here on behalf of our President, David Bates. David can't be here tonight. David lives in Boston and is currently in Madagascar, so we couldn't get him here tonight, but on his behalf, I welcome you. ISQua's mission is to inspire, promote and support continuous improvement in quality and safety in healthcare worldwide. We proudly and happily base ourselves here in Dublin, where we work with a team of 11 people, and we have a range of programs across 100 countries. Our 11 staff are supported by a pro bono network globally that works with us to deliver those programs. One such program is this Global Leader Lecture Series. The purpose of the Global Leader Lecture Series is to provide a local audience, and because we're being live streamed around the world tonight, a global audience, a unique opportunity to gain access to the leadership perspectives and insights of top leaders in healthcare in a global context. Tonight's lecture is being presented in partnership with our good friends and colleagues, the Department of Health in Ireland, specifically Patient Safety First, and the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. And we're presenting it from what I consider to be one of the finest and historically significant buildings anywhere in the world. I welcome Jim Breslin, Secretary General of the Department of Health, and Dermot O'Flynn, Director of Corporate Training of the RCSI, who are representing their organisations here tonight. Our lecturer on this occasion is Laurent Degos. Professor Degos truly epitomises what we seek to achieve in a Global Leader Lecture. He's highly qualified and respected, revered even, and he's thought-provoking and very often controversial and challenging. Professor Degos is Paris and Harvard educated and trained. He's widely published and cited, not only in his field of medicine, but in safety and quality and beyond. And I must say the titles of some of his publications are particularly intriguing. One in particular caught my eye, which is In Praise of the Error. No less intriguing is the title of his presentation tonight, A Managerial or a Medical Approach to Assessment of Quality and Safety. Before calling on Professor Degos to deliver the lecture, I'd like to invite Mr. Breslin, as I mentioned, Secretary General of one of our partners tonight, Department of Health, to say a few words, followed by Dermot O'Flynn. Jim?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. It's a great honour for me to say some welcoming remarks to our distinguished speaker here this evening, and maybe just to reflect on the fact that we have the great opportunity to join with the Royal College of Surgeons and with ISQua in hosting this evening's lecture. Some years back, and I was on the fringes of it, some far-seeing people in the Irish healthcare community decided that it would be a great and very prestigious thing for us to have ISQua located in Dublin. And people like Roisin Boland and Austin Leahy set their minds to trying to achieve that task with modest support from the department, but with huge effort on their part and their well-known networking abilities. We have the very happy fortune to have ISQua and the staff located here in Dublin. It gives us great opportunity to plug into a network of experts on quality in healthcare right across the world. Perhaps something that we haven't fully taken advantage of, but something that we hope to do more and more in the years to come, building on all of the work around quality improvement that's underway in the Irish Health Services. So as I say, it's a great honour for me both to welcome tonight's occasion, but in particular to welcome our distinguished speaker, Laurent Degos. And I'm intrigued by the title, which sets it up as a choice as between managerial or a medical approach, and no less than you, challenged by that question and really interested to see where our speaker takes us tonight. So thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dermot O'Flynn. I am the Director of Professional Development at the Institute of Leadership. And I suppose may I add my welcome to those of Peter Carter and Jim Breslin. I have to say we are delighted to be partnering with ISQua in this special event. and even more so that's being held here at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Sadly, our president cannot be here tonight, but he wishes the event every success. And personally, I'm really looking forward to listening to Professor Degos, an international leader in his field on patient safety. And like all of us, this is a great opportunity to learn. So I wish him every success in the speech tonight and enjoy your evening here at the college. Thank you.
Why measure quality improvement, and for whom? For a better rating of healthcare organizations, or for a better health of patients? No man can serve two masters. At the moment of celebrating my 50th anniversary as physician, taking care of patients, and my 35 years at the University of Paris as professor of medicine, I have the great honor to be invited by the ISQua, International Society for Quality of Healthcare, and to deliver this global leader lecture on a managerial or a medical approach for assessment of quality and safety. I'm delighted to be able to do this in this historical and prestigious home of the Royal College of Surgeons of Ireland. It's an opportunity to stand back and consider what we have learned from the past and to foresee new avenues on quality and safety of healthcare. My own successive experiences as physician treating patients with leukemia, and just to show you what I have done as a scientist, discovering how to transform a malignant cell to a normal cell, not only in vitro but in human, for the major leukemia, which is the most severe leukemia. And after that, I have been chairman of several public health, especially as chairman of the board of the Haute Autorité de Santé, HAS, the French authority for health care, looking at the improvement of quality of health care, gave me the opportunity to recognize the binary and conflicting vision of the quality of health and healthcare. On the one hand, managers exposing collective interests demand quality measurement based essentially on care processes that should be implemented in order to ensure lower liability insurance premiums, a high score in the assessment by regulatory authorities, and optimal distribution of limited healthcare resources. On the other hand, patients desire the best care available, and physicians balk at collecting data and process indicators, preferring to concentrate their effort on the optimal medical care for individual patients, and on the clinical outcomes, whatever the means and the cost. The dispute on quality and safety between the two parties, medical and managerial, could be actually summarized as a conflict between individual interest and collective interest. The individual interest is based on the trust, dialogue, confidence between a physician and a patient in order to deliver the best care for each patient. Conversely, the collective interest, focusing on organizational and economical aspects of healthcare, delineates the limits of healthcare feasibility according to safety, finances, and facilities at population level in view of fixed amount of national health expenditure. This could be translated as more efficacy at individual level and more safety and sustainability at the collective level. Furthermore, it's questionable the utilization of the same tools, such as indicators or certification accreditations, to assess the quality and safety for two distinct purposes: improvement of medical practice and better management of healthcare organizations. For patients and physicians, increasing quality and safety will often mean more patient-centered facilities, more available health products, more approved procedures. On the other hand, managers compel to health professionals to follow rules, processes, or controls, and to limit the patient expectations. Both sides are referring to quality and safety. The binary approach considers a primary objective, either the health of individual patients, whatever the cost, or the optimization of common resources, applying epidemiological, statistical, and economical analysis. How to combine these two approaches? Conflicting medical and managerials for quality and safety of healthcare. Both sides have to take a step forward to understand each other, and neither to override the other, nor to turn a deaf ear. Each party should ask the same basic question. Why and for whom are we promoting quality and safety of healthcare? I shall try to answer this question considering various circumstances, firstly by the recognition of the binary approach, secondly to see the search of underlying values, value of health, value of social values, and after to draw some insight and lessons. My conclusive remarks will be not to make a choice between a medical or managerial approach, but to combine medical and managerial point of views for a better patient care. For this purpose, I propose to subdivide my talk in two major themes: quality and safety. First, quality assessment considering two aspects: healthcare products and healthcare organizations. And safety assessment of healthcare activities and the role of resilience engineering compared to prescriptive strategies. Quality assessment first. Quality assessment of healthcare product and quality assessment of healthcare organizations. Quality assessment of healthcare product. Let us first look at the binary individual and collective interest in health technology assessment. After the market approval by specific agencies such as AMA or FDA or PMDA for the European, American, and Japanese populations, health insurers assess the cost effectiveness of a drug, device, or procedures, allowing decisions for price, reimbursement, and volume of dissemination. Why is a drug, after European market approval, often assessed differently in various countries, although the same clinical data are analyzed by each national expert committee? For instance, 3 countries with a national health insurance: England, France, and Germany, considering the expensive drug of sofosbuvir, a direct anti-hepatitis virus agent effective against all the known genotypes of the virus, delivered 3 different decisions. The drug today reimbursed for a very limited number of patients in England, was first refused for reimbursement. The drug is reimbursed according to the level of evidence restricted to the result of clinical randomized trials in Germany. And in France, it is reimbursed only for the severe cases. The economical assessment, collective interest, because of the high cost of probably interfere with the medical assessment, individual interest. Is the cost prevalent to the effectiveness of the drug or the reverse? Do we perform the assessment of the effectiveness and the cost simultaneously, mixing medical and economical aspects, or separately? Looking at first English and French opinions of sofosbuvir, an example among many other expensive drugs. No or almost no reimbursement in England, and reimbursement to specific cases in France. We can explain the discrepancy between the two national priorities by the fact that in England, it is the cost of opportunity as a priority, and in France, it is a loss of opportunity. What are the underlying social values? In England, decision makers applied an utilitarian policy. With this amount of money, one can spend better for other conditions. While in France, we applied an equalitarian policy. Each patient must have an even chance to be cured and thus should have a beneficial treatment at any price. Utility or equality? Two social values leading to two different decisions. Utility considers the collective interest first, using queries based on citizen preferences and defining the limits of cost per query, excluding de facto the reimbursement of very expensive drugs or drugs providing short-term improvement, such as treating cancer or elderly patients, forgetting the patient expectations and physician expectations. Equality considers the patient expectations. Conversely, this put in danger the finances of the national health insurance and may leave out better opportunities. Utility in England, using cost per query. Equality in France, equality of chance, independently of the type of the disease and treatment, reflect the binary vision of collective or individual interest, the economical or the medical approach. The applied methodologies confirm the difference in these approaches. In England, the economical and medical assessment are performed simultaneously, while in France, the economical assessment follows the medical assessment. Moreover, when you look on these two types, in order to avoid any loss of opportunity, the medical assessment in France is done one by one immediately after the market approval. While in England, the assessment is delayed and performed by class in order to have a better assessment of the cost of opportunity. The contrast between the two social values, utility and equality, collective and individual interest, was recently lowered due to the pressure of patients and physicians in one side and to the economical constraint in the other side. In Germany, the main social value is accountability. Anyone is accountable and takes responsibility for his actions. In the Sophos-Buvir example, only the randomized trials were presented by the pharmaceutical companies and not the observational ones were considered. Those randomized trials concern a subtype of the disease that is already being treated successfully by previous treatment and previous drugs, while the innovation was the sensitivity to Sophos-Buvir of difficult-to-treat genotypes, which is in this case demonstrated by the observational trials. For the German regulatory bodies, pharmaceutical companies should only present randomized trials and are responsible if the refusal of the innovative efficacy if they do not apply the admitted statistical methodology. Therefore, the strange initial decision was to accept the treatment for those who were already well treated, excluding those who could have a major benefit. Accountability in Germany is also applied to find a fair price for medical products. Accountability is also applied to any actor in healthcare. Providers, prescribers are accountable for incurred expenses. So what are the insights and lessons? The three social values, utility, accountability, and equality, lead to three approaches to decisions. Utility, referring to the cost of opportunity, induced a decision on reimbursement. Accountability, in Germany, basing the willingness to pay on the comparison with the cost and effectiveness of previous technologies for similar applications, leads to price negotiations and focus on the decision on pricing. And equality in France, referring to the loss of opportunity, leads to a definition to the exact indication in order to restrict the volume of dissemination. The three social values, utility, accountability, and equality, explain the three major positions for the decision makers on the three countries: reimbursement in England, pricing in Germany, and volume or package price volume in France. Two major countries, China and USA, has recently developed policies aiming at universal coverage for healthcare. In China, progressive coverage obliged to follow pragmatic and harmonious decisions, accepting recently, for instance, reimbursement of insulin for type 1 diabetes or dialysis for the kidney failure. While in USA, country of the liberty, fighting against monopolies and enhancing competitions, authorities prefer to move from the European model of health technology assessment to the comparative effectiveness research. Modeling referring to three words: comparison, effectiveness, and research. No word about the cost. Subsequently, they instituted by law, by the Affordable Care Act, a new body, the Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute, insisting on the priority of medical finding and clinical outcomes and refusing queries methodology by law. The Secretary shall not utilize such an adjusted life year or similar measure as a threshold to determine coverage, reimbursement, or incentive program. In conclusion of this first part of the quality assessment of health technologies, countries differ differently to the collective or individual interest, the economical or medical approach for assessment of product and procedures, mainly according to the social values: utility, accountability, equality, harmony, and liberty. All these values could be roughly categorized in two arguments: the cost of opportunity or the loss of opportunity, leading to two major social values, utility and equality, reflecting the collective interest and the individual interest, respectively. The second topic, after the product, is a care organization. Let us look on the binary approach, managerial and medical. Healthcare organizations undertake accreditation and use quality indicators with the objective to respond, of course, to the patient expectations, but also to respond to expectations of payers and to avoid complaints and scandals, thus lowering insurance premium and giving argument to the lawyers. Response to questions about quality in perspective of helping lawyers, protecting reputation, and convincing payers do not represent the quality of healthcare itself. In most cases, the accreditation procedures promotes, assesses, and reports on requirements that leadership, organization, and protocols are effectively in place. This is an approach that is more managerial than medical. Everybody should be and would be satisfied if the compliance with the numerous processes and protocols was related to clinical outcomes of patients: mortality, complication, quality of life. However, several studies demonstrated the absence of the weak link between the quality of surgery, of cardiology, and many other topics, between the quality of implementation of processes in hospitals and clinical outcomes. So if there is no link or no demonstrated link between the absence of link between processes and outcomes, it is a crucial issue for administrators and regulatory agencies. So, moreover, several studies demonstrated that the payment for performance has practically no influence on the clinical outcomes in healthcare organizations, and one could say that payment performance is not performing. Thus, the question, actually, the question on managerial and medical approaches is a central question in the assessment of quality of hospitals. Are the quality designed and used in a legal, administrative, insurance, and regulatory perspective, or for a better patient-centered outcome strategy? For protection against threats and complaints, or for an improvement of clinical outcomes? What are the values underlying? Why and for whom do we apply quality assessment? A better health or a better stay in the hospital? Do we value a perfect apparent organization, a well-oiled machine, a beautiful monument with a perfect respect of processes and protocols, or an organization combining efficacy, safety, and access to care? In order to increase the percentage of cured patients, to diminish the rate of mortality, the rate of complication, and to give a better quality of life to the patients. While patients may ask for a clean building with numerous facilities and comfort, their first choice is to have a better clinical outcome when they stay in an hospital. So, could a common value of healthcare reconcile the controversy between the managers and medical vision of quality? Michael Porter from Boston says that in healthcare, stakeholders have a myriad of often conflicting goals, including access to services, professionalism, cost containment, safety, convenience, patient-centeredness, and satisfaction. The value is defined as a health outcome achieved per dollar spent. Cost reduction without regard to the outcome achieved is dangerous and self-defeating, leading to false saving. The goal and thus the value of healthcare are related to the clinical outcomes, less mortality, less morbidity, and a better quality of life. The collection of clinical outcome indicators is not yet successfully implemented. The hospital mortality rate in itself, apparently non-ambiguous quality indicator, whose application is restricted to the healthcare organization, is often measured. England was particularly sensitive to in-hospital mortality after the tragedy of the cardiac surgery in Bristol. A safety agency was created, and Brian German proposed a methodology to compare healthcare organization according to mortality in hospitalized patients. However, as said the journalist Nigel Oakes, the public inquiry into the Mid-Stafford Foundation Trust disclosed ingenious ways of modifying outcomes in order to improve their rating and of concealing deaths. For instance, changes in coding practice resulted in many deaths being excluded from the calculation of hospital by classifying increasing number of patients as palliative care cases. The purpose of data collection on clinical outcomes is a central question. The clinical outcomes indicators are mainly made to improve medical practice and should not be perverted by straight and dismissal or by administrative prescription. These perversions encourage deviation and gaming practice that are often due to economical constraints, either directly in reducing the cost or indirectly having better rank and consequently higher income. Conversely, medical arguments could not be an excuse of refusing demands of measurement and data collection. In the purpose of collecting clinical data and clinical outcome indicators, we organized in 2010 with Fiona Godley, chief editor of British Medical Journal, a joint symposium, HAS-BMG. We envisaged the possible construction of indicators from clinical outcomes called reverse indicators, similar to the reverse genetic, starting from the difference of outcomes in the care of a disease and searching an indicator related to the difference and easy to record. We obtained several hundred abstracts coming from clinicians, demonstrating their involvement and enthusiasm when quality indicators corresponded to their expectations. That is to say, to find outcome indicators or process indicators related to a better clinical outcome. Anyway, the goal and thus the value of health care is a patient better health. What are the insights and lessons? If we admit together that clinical outcomes is a key element determining the value of health care, we should revise our tools of quality assessment of quality of health care. Clinical outcomes are the result of effort over the full cycle care from the first symptom to the discharge of the patient, not only to the well-organized care given in hospital. A perfect care in hospital could be erased by a bad care before and after hospitalization. Conversely, a good primary care could be erased by difficulties to access to hospital or by a safety problem during hospitalization. The outcome is the addition of the quality of care before, during, and after hospitalization. This chain of care is not adequately assessed at present time by accreditation nor by process indicators reflecting hospital activities. We started 10 years ago. At the Haute Autorité de Santé in France, programs on the whole pathway of patients with AMI or cerebrovascular accident. We constructed the optimal pathway with all categories of professionals. Time is heart in case of AMI, time is brain in case of stroke, and any procedures shortening the time before vessel disobstruction was preferred. We plotted indicators of efficacy, E, safety, S, and access to care, A, within the pathway. For instance, looking at the access to care, the patients call directly the ambulatory care units through the specific phone number. This is available in France everywhere today, allowing the delivery of emergency procedures at home and the direct access to interventional cardiology units. Bypassing the GPs, general practitioners, bypassing the hospital emergency. This optimal pathway led to 50% decrease of mortality and 50% decrease of cost. That means that the optimal pathway combines the individual interest and the collective interest, a better life for the patient, and economical advantage. In fact, what we have learned from the past, where we should move. We used industrial approach of quality and safety, looking at processes. We have constructed quality indicators applied in all hospitals in order to sort hospitals in quality categories. Should we move to looking at clinical outcomes, mortality amenable to healthcare, avoidable complication, avoidable hospitalization, morbidity, quality of life? We have implemented administrative indicators with no actual commitment of physicians who are the principal actors. We partitioned quality assessment to sectors of healthcare, such as hospitals, GPs, forgetting the links between them and the final endpoint, which is the clinical outcomes resulting of the whole pathway of the patient. That is to say, to improve efficacy, safety, and access to care at each step of the patient pathway, from the first symptom to the discharge. In this perspective, we should assess a full cycle care of a disease and compare year after year the improvement of clinical outcomes, instead of making comparison between hospitals and at given time. The approach considering clinical outcomes for each type of disease and the full cycle care modifies completely our view on the quality and safety assessment. And icing on the cake, both individual and collective interests are joined by the optimal patient pathway, as we have seen for the AMI. Furthermore, healthcare in hospital is not stable. Several disruptive innovations are in development, such as today targeted treatment for cancer patients, ambulatory surgery, tumor ablation without surgeons, replacement of bacterial laboratories by small boxes and cartridge at bedside, the use of connected numeric device, and so forth. The ability to adaptation, The transfer of competence and the well-organized interface between hospital and proximity care are probably the major challenge for the future and the best indicators. Therefore, the question today is not, do we have to move from accreditation and quality indicators of ISQua to outcome indicators of the whole patient pathway, but how to do it? Coordinated care and integrated care are considered differently in various countries. In England, healthcare budget is given to the proximity care general practitioners who decide the best pathway with the help of the clinical commissioning groups. In USA, the coordination of pathway is more centralized by one actor through the presence of accountable care organization. In France, the pathways are constructed and organized by the regional health agencies using guidelines from the Haute Autorité de Santé. Now we move to the safety assessment. Although quality is the addition of efficacy, safety, and access to care, safety itself could replace all of them. If a patient receives a non-efficacious procedure, is or is she in danger? If a patient has no access to a beneficial treatment or to a precise diagnostic tool, he or she is in danger. No efficacy, no access induce a safety issue. Thus, quality and safety are consubstantial. The discrimination between quality and safety in separate agencies or separate administrations should no longer survive. Safety is the first priority of and for customers. However, no or little progress in patient safety occurred during the last decades, except in some specific domains. We have made improvement on targeted safety issues, such as decrease of frequency of nosocomial infections by a common and concerted effort. Meanwhile, no effect on the frequency of antibiotic-resistant bacteria was observed. Another way of progress was to isolate one element from the whole healthcare system, also called fragmentation, and to use an industrial approach of safety on this element, obtaining an ultra-safe status similar to civil aviation. This independent ultra-safe domain, such as for red blood cell transfusion, being totally fixed, evolved, and adapt poorly. They are regulated separately by specific organizations, blood banks, or agencies, minimizing the interfaces with the rest of the healthcare system. Systematic fragmentation is dangerous in an adaptive complex system, excluding some parts from the evolution and therefore fragilizing the whole system. Apart from these examples, little improvement in patient safety was noted during the last decade, and almost 10% of hospitalized patients experienced a severe adverse event everywhere in the world, and some of them leading to the death. Taking a comparison, often quoted by journalists, and taking into account USA only, the number of events is equivalent to a crash of a jumbo aircraft every day. Several voices repeatedly reported this lack of improvement, although many quality and safety rules, guidelines, and controls were promulgated and applied. For instance, an article written by the top leaders of healthcare safety, Lucian Leap, Donald Berwick, Corinne Clancy, and others, reported that while efforts to improve patient safety have proliferated during the past decades, progress toward improvement has been frustratingly slow. The two French inquiries, ENAIS, Enquête nationale des événements indésirables sévères, carried out at 5 years interval in 2004 and 2009, did not disclose any change in the rate of severe adverse events in the hospitals, and sometimes the results were worse 5 years later. The question is, how could we increase the safety in healthcare, notably in hospitals, which are the source of severe adverse events for the patient? So we shall focus our discussion on two topics. First, the policy. Is a policy of no blame or a policy of sanction? And second, the attitude. An attitude of prescriptive strategy or autonomy and resilience engineering. Let us start with the safety assessment of healthcare activity and the question, no blame or sanction? Delivering healthcare is not like conducting a well-oiled machine, an aircraft, a car. The system is complex and evolutive, adding innovation every day, including tools and procedures involving many professionals and many categories. This creates myriad of unexpected events, which could be also beneficial due to accidental, often called serendipity, and we have to admit that several major medical discoveries were made through unexpected events. Let us look on the binary behavior. Guilty or not guilty? That is a question. Confronted to an adverse event, the spontaneous attitude is to find a guilty person and to apply sanctions. Managers feel that they have done their duty, and the victims feel better compensated if they can put a name on the origin of the event and rebuke an individual. However, for better safety, we should concentrate our effort on the search of causes of an accident in order to repair the defect. In case of adverse event, notably a non-preventable event, the harm is the result of is not the result of one deleterious action, is not the result of a single individual. Usually the damage is due to the addition of several defects along the chain of activities involving various professionals together with the presence of environmental abnormalities. Let us take, for example, a deck of cards and build a house of cards. One after the other, the cards are gently put and connected to the others. Then one card destroys the house. It could have been the previous or the following one. Is the event due to this one card, to the King of Hearts or the Queen of Spades? Is the figure on the card responsible or guilty? No. It is due to all previous cards with their small defect fragilizing the whole house. They were well adapted for a small house and small configuration, but not for higher one. The healthcare system becomes progressively more complex. Similarly to the house of cards, adverse events are not due to the last actor, but to the addition of several small defects and interfaces. Errors are inherent to any adaptive and evolutive complex system, such as healthcare. A fault is due to one person, done voluntarily, and usually he or she repeats it. So to wonder is not to commit a fault. An error could be deleterious or beneficial. Any adaptive system intrinsically should have an unexpected event. The absence of error means that the system is definitively fixed and could not have any development. Errors represent the engine of the evolution and adaptation of the system. For instance, the evolution and the adaptation of the living world in the nature are the result of genetic errors regulated by natural selection. No natural evolution is possible without errors, and nobody is responsible for a genetic disease. Error is not human. The error is the result of multiple causes inside the adaptive and evolutive complex system, confronted to a specific environment. Thus, we should modify our initial spontaneous attitude. The last actor is not a guilty individual, and it is our duty to recognize and repair all the successive defective elements. This social value and the values. Guilty and sanctioned, or no blame, no shame policy. All about me, or search of all causes. A conflict between individual and collective values. On the one hand, each patient wishes, and has a right, to know all about me. And on the other hand, the objective of the collective interest aims to recognize all causes leading to the adverse event in order to repair the system. Ideally, these two values could be combined, informing everybody, patients, families, administrators, on the results of the inquiry. In fact, nobody speaks when someone looks for a guilty person and aims to apply a sanction. Either we aim to have one or several guilty persons paying damage and being sanctioned, which are for the victim a moral and possibly a financial compensation. This attitude obliges to a total transparency. Or we wish to look for the repair of a series of small defects, which obliges each actor to participate in the inquiry of the root cause analysis with no notion of blame or shame, in an effort to loosen tongues. The professional experience the same surprise as the damaged person, never having wishes such harm. He is deeply depressed by the catastrophic event and could be considered a second victim. He could not speak. He cries. Instead of helping to understand what happened, people, patients, hierarchy, managers, lawyers, judges ask him to justify his attitude. He is asked to explain himself instead of being asked to participate in an analysis that aims to explain the adverse event. He should not be considered as a guilty person, but a victim of the adaptive system. Several countries implemented psychological help for them. We are confronted here to a conflict between the individual interest based on the transparency value and the collective interest in the repair of the system based on the safety value. These two values, transparency and safety, both worthy of respect, are mutually exclusive. Patients themselves have similar binary feeling. Not only do they ask for a total transparency, but they ask also to prevent the reoccurrence of such adverse events. What are the insights and lessons? Countries like USA, through the Patient Safety and Quality Improvement Act of 2005, and Australia, prioritize the collective value of safety based on a voluntary reporting, establishing privilege and confidentiality protection for patient safety work product. Nobody should know of the debate between the actors of an event. Conversely, in other countries like Japan, Article 21 of medical practitioners, the obligation of healthcare professionals is to declare any unnatural death to the police. And it was extended since 1990 to the medical errors. An independent agency will be created next year for the search of the causes of death. But the link between the agency and the police is not defined, and the Article 21 has not been revised. So between these two attitudes, protection and declaration of police, Denmark, another country, decided that after an adverse event, two types of inquiries were possible. One totally protected for the search of causes, and the second totally opened to help the patient. In France, we have implemented through a law, firstly, the obligation for the professional who was present at the event to inform within 15 days the patient of a damage due to an adverse event, and secondly, the creation of a fund for no-fault compensation. The no-fault compensation for financial compensation and for information by the professional to alleviate the legitimate concern of the patient. In order to enhance reporting and repairs, we have implemented at Haute Autorité de Santé a program of accreditation of physicians, at-risk surgeons, anesthesists, gynecologists, based on the analysis of the near misses. Any physician engaged in this program receives a financial incentive as part of his insurance premiums that is paid by the national insurance. Note, in this context of near miss, the search of causes is easier because there is no damage. Furthermore, one barrier that could be identified and reinforced stopped the deleterious process. More than 10,000 physicians are now enrolled in this near-miss program. It appears that the examination of a limited number of cases per year leads to a significant repair of the local system if an actual root cause analysis is performed, decreasing the interest of a mandatory and exhaustive reporting of all adverse events. In fact, defect in the chain, for instance, a drug delivery chain from the prescription by the physician to the patient treatment, depends on the organization of the healthcare, on the architecture of the building, on the circuit inside the hospital. The causes of these successive defects will differ in each hospital, decreasing the interest of a national exhaustive reporting. Thus, when confronted to an adverse event, each country responds differently to the conflict of individual and collective interests. Each country has made the choice between individual value of total transparency and the collective value of safety of the health organization by repairing the series of even small defects. The second topic about the safety is a prescriptive strategy or autonomy and resilience engineering. Two approaches originated by two tragedies. During the last World War, the US Navy was in great part destroyed in a short time. Reconstruction of the ships could be realized within few months, but not the training and performing crews. Education and training of obtaining efficacious crew usually needs several years. The innovative idea of prescribed processes applied at all levels of hierarchy allowed the Navy to have crews almost as performing as those obtained by classical education. The magic effect of obtaining excellent actors with no effort and with the advantage of having interchangeable personnel through prescribed processes explains the rapid and dominant dissemination of processes in any activity of the society. No more education for any device, even for domestic use. The series of multiple manuals are piled up on shelves everywhere. Healthcare procedures follow the same scheme. For any activity, prescribed processes and protocols were made with belief that they increased the safety and allowed an easy replacement and movement of the personnel. On the other hand, the second tragedy occurred also in USA, when a shuttle, Columbia, exploded the 1st of February, the 2003, with 7 astronauts, 7 letters to another shuttle, Challenger, on January 26, 1986, with also 7 astronauts. All the prescribing procedures were followed. The NASA asked a group of scientists to find new rules for safety. David Woods, Eric Hornagel, Nancy Leveson, Yoshi Fujita, René Malberti, and others proposed a new concept of resilience engineering. The definition of resilience can be the ability of a system or an organization to react and to recover from disturbance at any stage with minimal effect on the dynamic stability. The personnel should not always follow prescribed protocols, but should adapt their decisions to the variability of the context. Sometimes the professional is confronted to an unknown context, either not similar to a previous one or by the addition of several minor disturbances. In these circumstances, no training could be organized, no rule could be promulgated. Errors, deleterious but also beneficial errors, could occur, and the strategy is to prevent the damage while retaining the new advantageous condition rather than prescribing strategies which erase any variability. Civil aviation retains the basis of protocol and prescribed procedures. Aircraft and travels are not so variable, and a prescriptive strategy avoids any trouble in timetables. However, no improvement in the rate of accident, 1 per million of flight, was observed during the last 25 years. Conversely, US Army safety moved toward autonomy, reducing mortality, and healthcare. Healthcare safety is still mainly governed by managerial approach following prescriptive strategies. Two instructive stories enlighten the two approaches. During the takeoff of New York Kennedy Airport, a flight was dangerously compromised, you know that, by one bird stopping an engine, and then another one stopping the other. The captain, Chesley Sullenberger, contacted the control tower. He did not follow the orders, going back, going to LaGuardia, going to the private airport of Tatapo, but he put the aircraft, A320, in the Hudson Bay, saving all the passenger lives. He was 67 years old and previously a pilot from the Army, the US 4 Army, and perhaps explaining the exploit and adapting the procedure to the context. The second story is a study of unexpected mortality after a common surgery of 85,000 patients in 186 hospitals during 3 years, reported by Gaffrey. The centers were classified according to the mortality rates, and the best and the worst were compared. No difference in the quality parameters, accreditation indicators. No difference in the number and types of complication. So why there is a difference? The difference is due to the adaptation to variability, the rapid reaction of the actors, whatever their position in the hierarchy, when they are confronted with the beginning of a complication, not looking time for reporting, not waiting for prescription and application of protocols. The difference is due to the team spirit, the team reaction, the anticipation, and the resilience. What are the binary values underlying the prescriptive strategy and autonomy policies? The two approaches, either retrospective, following protocols and prescribed procedures constructed according to the previous accidents and events, or forward-looking, adapting decision according to the variable and unexpected circumstances, represent the two principles that can be compared to looking at the rear view mirror or looking ahead in the car. On the one hand, following checklists, protocols, and other prescribed documents, segmenting the activity and allowing the interchangeability of the personnel could lead to an ultra-safe healthcare sector, such as blood transfusion, as we said. However, the prescriptive strategy diminishes the accountability, protecting the actors against the complaints. The success of prescriptive strategy led to a proliferation of protocols, protocols of control, control of control, decreasing the responsibility of the personnel who is more concerned by the documents than by the patients themselves. No variability is accepted, and thus no minor adverse events occurs. No delays, no small defects, while an unexpected rare event could induce a dramatic strategy with no immediate, no adapted response. Conversely, autonomy, obliged to have a common view, an empowerment of the actors, a permanent vigilance, a rapid reaction to any variability, exercising talent and intelligence. If many small adverse events could occur due to the variability, a severe event could be often prevented and stopped before the consequent harm occurs. These two attitudes consequently induce two feelings about the work life: to be in or to be out of the common objective, exerting talent or transcribing protocols. Two attitudes when confronted to an adverse event: anticipating and adjusting, or reporting the event and waiting for orders. So if the error is not human, due to the complexity of the adaptive system, the anticipation is human, avoiding harms due to errors arising during the unexpected events. So what are the insights and lessons? The two policies are not mutually exclusive. One needs to have a perfect techniques to be talented. An artist, such as a violinist, should first acquire violin techniques and then add his personal touch, transforming the music to a brilliant play. A surgeon should have excellent skill in surgical reasoning and techniques before exerting his talents in innovative procedures. Innovation could be implemented only on a solid organization. Too many protocols kills protocols. Too much autonomy induces anarchy. However, prescriptive procedures and autonomy cannot be applied simultaneously, but sequentially. Prescriptive strategy is mandatory in some circumstances, such as checklist in operating theater, and resilience is preferred in case of emergency, in order to adapt the procedure to complex conditions. The problem is to reduce the number of protocols to the minimum required, and not to have a lot of documents so numerous that nobody could follow them. Autonomy asks everybody to be permanently on alert, vigilant, and attentive, which is more characteristic of clinical behavior. Hierarchy and managers should not be obsessed by protocol and processes. Resilience engineering certainly increases the safety. In conclusion, we could caricature the managerial, economical, regulatory approach, vying to avoid complaints and misstep by perfect processes, to minimize the load by the cost opportunity principle, to characterize the best and the worst through accreditation and industrial quality indicators, paying for performance, looking for guilty person and sanctioning any errors, refraining any autonomy, aiming to have a perfect system with fixed procedures on one side, and on the other side, the patient-centered clinical approach, looking for better clinical outcome through efficacy, safety, and access to care, managing for the optimal full cycle care, before, during, and after hospitalization, comparing year after year the patient pathway for a disease, paying for participation in the full cycle care, applying no blame, no shame principle to find the causes and to repair the multiple defects, favoring autonomy, anticipation, resilience, adaptation, and limiting protocols and prescribed procedures to those related to clinical outcome in order to react and recover from disturbance at early stage with a minimal effect on the dynamic stability. In fact, we need both approaches. In order to have an excellent and well-organized hospitals, good links between hospitals and the environment, and to obtain the best outcomes for the patient. A crosstalk between the two approaches feeds a cross-fertilization. The difficulty is to find a balance between the two approaches and not to be too managerial, as we could have been in the past, and not to be too medical, avoiding the risk of anarchy. For instance, health professionals make guidelines of good practice according to a strict methodology defined by regulatory bodies. To combine managerial and medical approach, I try to explain that the quality and safety assessment should derive from value-based rationales and management, from evidence-based strategies inducing better clinical outcomes, and from the development of teamwork based on anticipation. I could stop my lecture at this stage. However, we have to consider that politicians who make the decision interfere with this approach. Frequently, politicians wish to assess the national health system before making decisions. They assess on the organization of healthcare. The choice of criterion are related to health, the health expenses, and satisfaction of population. Looking at the results of the health of the population, one can note that the ranks of the nation has nothing to do with the economical and medical concern. The macro approach of the quality assessing health system and the population outcomes seems to be independent from the micro and meso indicator of quality of healthcare. In fact, satisfaction of the population is a major concern of politicians. And satisfaction is mainly related to access to care, financially, geographically, timely, as well as access to innovation and sophisticated procedures. Any constraint to access to care induces a decrease in the satisfaction of the population. Access to care is a result of the crosstalk between managerial and medical approaches of quality and safety in healthcare. It should not be decided by administrative orders, nor by medical forces. The balance between the constraint due to the environment and the availability of the professionals needs a permanent dialogue of the managers and health professionals. So at the end of the lecture, 4 insights and lessons. The first one, to make a choice between utility and equality, between cost of opportunity and loss of opportunity. The second lesson, to move from processes and indicators and accreditation of hospitals to the full cycle care evaluation and patient outcomes indicators, mortality, morbidity, and quality of life. Third, to err is not human. Errors are due to the adaptive and evolutive complex system. It is preferable to apply a no-blame, no-shame policy in order to find the multiple causes and to repair the health organization than to apply an individual sanctions. Fourth, to anticipate is human. Resilience engineering is inherent to healthcare practice, and vigilance and talents should be promoted. We are probably to move for more medical and less managerial approach for assessment of quality of healthcare. More attention of efficacy, safety, and access to care applied at each step of the whole patient pathway is a key issue for the quality of healthcare. Satisfaction of the population about the health system is really related to access to care and bundled care. That is geographically, economically, timely, accessible, a perfect example of medical and managerial combined effort. And my last words, managerial or medical approaches should not stand alone in a binary relationship, but must be complementary for assessment and improvement of quality and safety in healthcare. These two companions, managerial and medical approaches, must pull them together, hand in hand, in order to cope successfully with the same goal, for what and for whom? For a patient's better health. Thank you very much.
Laurent, thank you very much. I see the time is getting away from us. I would like to give you the opportunity of perhaps just asking one or two questions. As promised, this was a lateral views presented to you, backed by science. There are some controversial suggestions. Would anyone like to take up some of the issues that Professor Degos has raised tonight? Are there any questions? Philip Crowley.
Well, more of a reflection, Laurent. Thank you so much for a tremendous presentation, and one which I'm sure the audience will chime with a lot of what you're saying. Because the solution's never one side or the other, is it? It's always somewhere in the middle, I find, when we create binary positions. I suppose in Ireland what we're doing is we are, in this kind of field, we're promoting open disclosure. We're trying to get people to front up to when things go wrong, change the culture. We're trying to, we conduct investigations, we get involved in multiple layers of investigations, and we need a kind of a system that trusts the initial investigation where we can find the root causes, as you say. But we also promote something I suppose we would call a just culture rather than a blame culture. So if there are repeated failures on individuals' parts or patterns of poor behavior or willful poor practice, then obviously people will pay a consequence. But we do have to resist a massive public demand, I think, for heads on a plate these days. And it was very much in the fore today when we were discussing our approach to accountability. And all the questions from the media were, so when will somebody's head be chopped off? When will somebody get fired? I mean, will people get fired? That's what people want to know. So that's an environment I'm sure it sounds like you share as well. And I'm interested in your comparison between the French rugby team and maybe the medical profession. I think you were comparing them to the anarchy of the medical profession potentially, and the well-renowned anarchy of the French rugby team at times when they've rebelled against their own coaches. But I suppose what we've tried to do with our own medics, and a lot of us are medics here, is to promote medics in leadership positions alongside their nursing colleagues and others, where they cross the divide and managers cross the divide in the other direction, and we have mature, non-anarchist medical leaders who can see both sides of your argument. So thank you very much for a tremendous presentation.
Thank you. Would you mind announcing yourself when you ask the question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Irene. I'm a risk advisor with the State Claims Agency, and we host the National Learning and Reporting System. And I couldn't agree with you more that we don't need exhaustive lists of reporting, And I'm interested in that in the light of you mentioned about accreditation for doctors around near misses. So can you talk a little bit about those two pieces, please? That might be helpful. Thank you.
The discussion is either to have an exhaustive reporting and to know what happens everywhere, or to have a limited number of cases that we could deeply investigate in order to know what are the root cause analysis. And we started with near misses because in near misses there is no damage to the patient. So by this way we have a lot of physicians who were very happy to work on the causes. And furthermore, we can congratulate the barrier who stopped the damage. So we can have both sides, either to see what happens and what are the causes, and second to congratulate and to reinforce the barrier. So the barrier could be the family, could be anybody. So that's a barrier stopped the procedure which was dangerous. So this near misses, furthermore, we obtained from the national insurance in France to have an incentive in order to have more and more physicians involved in this. And a part, and even a large part of the premium for insurance is reimbursed by the national insurance to the physician. So they take in charge a part of their premium and insurance, the private premium insurance. So the program is really a success. And furthermore, I can say that when a person is engaged in this near misses program, which is almost three near miss investigated per year. It's not a lot, 3, but 3 is enough just to investigate all the system, because if you investigate, you can see all the small defect of the system of the hospital. And people engaged in that wish to continue to not to have only the near misses, but the real damage. And it is, I think it is a first step, a good first step for engagement of the professional in these safety programs. So I don't know if I answered to your question. So we limited to the gynecologist, anesthesiologist, surgeon, and now we are looking for an extension to all the professionals, because it's a real success to do that.
Thank you. Perhaps one more question. John Sweeney, for a board member of ISQua.
Thank you, Professor, for that thought-evoking presentation. One thought I'm trying to get my head around, for countries that haven't the concepts of accreditation and process indicators developed, should they just look at bypassing that stage entirely and then moving into how we measure quality of life? Or is it more of an evolving concept that we need to put that accreditation indicator foundation there and then hopefully develop to the next stage?
Thank you for your question. My answer 2 years ago would be that we should start with accreditation and indicators. But today, I think everybody is thinking about the pathway. We are thinking about the whole pathway of the patient, from the first symptom to the discharge, before the hospitalization, during hospitalization, and after hospitalization. So accreditation is just one link, or just a small part of this pathway. So probably we should have more attention in the future to the interface between proximity to the hospital and to hospital to the proximity and to the following care. So the question is to be focused on the hospital. Is perhaps not so useful. We should have an overview and to mix all the professionals of the pathway, to be patient-centered, to be really patient-centered. What is the pathway of the patient? And where are the pitfalls? And the pitfalls are not only in the hospital. It could be in between hospital and proximity. It could be at the end of the hospital. It could be before the hospital. It could be, so to have a look, and mainly on the 3 values, which is efficacy, safety, and access to care, and not limited to the safety. Efficacy is also very important, and access to care is very important too. So probably I can say today that accreditation is too limited. And if they think to be engaged in this kind of program of quality of healthcare, it's better to think the whole pathway if they could do that. And not to compare hospital with the other hospital, just to have some categories of hospital, but to compare for a disease and a patient pathway for a disease year after year. Is there an improvement from this year compared to the last year? And not to compare this hospital to the other. I think we have to change completely our mind. It's better to have better pathway every year for each disease instead of to compare the hospital one to the other. And if the hospital is not obligatory, is not mandatory for treatment, we are comparing something with them. For instance, we could compare the emergency unit for the AMI. And now we know that we should exclude the emergency unit because we spend time, which is, and so it's better to go directly to the cardiology units. So it's true that I think that we have to think the pathway of the patient to be really patient-centered, the pathway of the patient for the whole pathway of the patient.
Before asking you to thank Professor Degos again, I have to say that I admire anyone that shows a slide that has any rugby team scoring a try against the English. So thank you again, Professor.